Hello and welcome. My name is Jody Lynn Craven, founder of Abundance Consciousness, and this is my dear friend, Heather Marie.
Hi, I'm Heather Marie, founder of Soulgate. Welcome to Channel Squared, where we have extraordinary channeled conversations about everyday life topics. Every week, we choose a topic, connect with you, the divine, and our guides, and then channel here with you live.
Yes, we do. And today we are talking about divine timing. Have you ever wanted something so bad it hurt? You kind of obsess over it every waking moment. You think all about it. How do you let it go? How do you lean into divine timing? How do you get not frustrated and irritated when someone says, "Oh, divine timing, it'll come in divine time"? That's what we're talking about today. How can you let all of that go and allow your desires to come and focus on divine timing? I feel like this is a divinely timed episode.
Very divine.
If we do say so ourselves. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is going to be a really fun topic today because I think that so many times we get so frustrated with the whole idea of divine timing that, I mean, we are a species of instant gratification. I mean, thank you, Amazon.
Right? It has like been bred into our culture that you get things fast. You want something, you get it now. So all patience has gone out the window.
Bye.
Bye. Do you have an experience where you felt this, Heather? Because I feel like, when you're sitting in our seats, a lot of people, I think, look at us and are like, oh, they probably never get frustrated or, deal with irritation. Wrong. That's not true at all. We're human beings. But Heather, do you want to share an experience where you felt super frustrated about divine timing?
Oh my gosh, I could fill this entire hour with stories about divine timing. You see, there's this funny thing about me. Fun fact about Heather is I came here to learn patience. This is my life lesson. So this is just so divinely timed. But so, yeah, I mean, I definitely have had plenty of experiences. I mean, I could go on and on about the experiences, but I can give you, let's see, the first one that pops to my mind, probably when I met my husband. So I talk about my husband a lot on this show. Poor guy. He's probably like, oh my God, here she goes again. But when those of you who know me, that have worked with me and know my history, my past, know that I have had a previous relationship prior to meeting my husband that was, it was great. There were a lot of things that were great about it. I got a beautiful stepdaughter and stepson out of it, whom I love very much and would do anything for. But when that relationship ended, I spent some time, working on myself and becoming the woman that would attract a man like my husband. And the thing that's really interesting about my story with him, I'm sorry, I'm rolling my sleeves while we speak. The really interesting thing about this story is that I had a business in a one of those salon suite type of things. Those are ladies that are on here will probably know what I'm talking about. But I rented a studio where I operated my beauty business, and another esthetician came in and she was working her business. Now, this was well before I met Quinn. This was when I was in my previous relationship. And, in this relationship, I was just like, please God, show me the way, help me, either evolve this relationship into something that's, good for me or bring me something better. Right. And so this girl moves in, she works for a couple years, and then she closes her business. And when she closes her business, she leaves all of her business to me. And her only one of her clients, out of all of her clients, only one actually showed up at my door, and it was my husband's mom. And so she became a client and a good friend over the years. And, at the time I was kind of on and off dating another man. I'd left, my ex, and I just kept saying, this or better, this or better. And I just kind of felt like, gosh, why does this just keep happening? I keep attracting these men that just don't appreciate me, that don't value what I bring, that, gaslight me when they can, and I just kept feeling more and more impatient about it. Little did I know that, my future mother-in-law was coming in every 6 weeks to see me for services. And as time evolved, those of you who know the story know that, I met my husband at a spiritual workshop that she was hosting at her home. And it's just really amazing how it all happened, because if I would have met him back then, way back then, he would have been too young for me.
Mhm.
I'm 8 years older than my husband. So he was like, I don't know, in college, early college years, maybe graduating from high school, even when I was already making the request for my perfect person, right? So I think that, this is a perfect example of divine timing. It wasn't right. One, because if people looked at us back then, I literally would have been that like going to jail lady, right?
You literally
So
would have went to jail.
exactly. So I mean, that's a perfect example of, everything that I had happen in my relationship life led me to the point where I could start a relationship with him, because anytime
Mhm.
sooner than that moment wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked. He wouldn't have been ready emotionally. He wouldn't have been old enough. There's so many things on his side that were just age driven.
Mhm.
Simple as that.
Mhm.
And so divine timing came in and said, this is the perfect man for her. She's too old for him right now. Let's wear her down a little, give her
Well,
some
and
more life
you might not
experience.
have considered him because of his age. Like you could have met him, on
Absolutely.
the street somewhere at a bar, wherever, and been like, young
Right.
kids,
Exactly. I mean, when I met him, I was 38, 39 maybe. He was 30. And I was like, hmm. For a minute there, I kind of thought about it like, would this be a mistake?
Mhm.
He's so much younger. And like, I thought about where I was at when I was 30,
Mhm.
and I didn't know anything back then that I know now. I was very, you know, naive.
Oh.
So, but he's a very old soul, and I quickly picked up on the fact that he's an old man in a young man's body, and that he probably was supposed to come in a lot sooner than when he did. And
Mm.
so, it probably, for whatever reason, his timeline got blown. And so the universe said, okay, we'll just slow her down, and we
Yeah.
will give her relationships that are going to make her really appreciate him when he does show up. So my lesson being in patience, if I'm patient, things come to me, and they come to me in the perfect time.
Mhm.
And so, you know, something that, we're dealing with right now is having a baby. And, we've been unsuccessful so far. And, it's a kind of painful, rocky road. But I try, when I get into that space of like, why is this not happening for me?
Mhm.
Why are we not getting a baby because we want one so much? I
Yeah.
think about patience, Heather, and in divine time, the baby will arrive
Mhm. I
by
think
whatever means.
by whatever means, a stork, perhaps, uh, could be
A baby on my doorstep.
a
No,
baby on my doorstep. Maybe not. That doesn't sound legal.
maybe not.
Um, yeah, but I think that when it comes to this conversation about patience, I'll most often hear it when it comes to relationships, money, success. I'll tie both of those together, and a family. And I have felt it through all of those things I can completely relate. And I think a lot of people can relate to your relationship story. I feel like I went through guy after guy after guy after guy after guy after guy. Like, man, I felt like I was banging my head against the wall. Like I was never going to find the right one. And I was actually engaged before I met my husband. And it's so interesting because I remember throughout, my single days, I had a relationship early on in life and, thought that was the one, quickly realized that that's not what I wanted for my life or a marriage or whatever, wised up and got out of Dodge. And I remember years later, like, I don't know, 6, 7 years after that point, somewhere in there, I remember somebody telling me who is still Facebook friends with that guy, my ex Cody, that he was engaged. And I remember crawling into my bed and crying. And I was just like, oh my. And it's not because I wanted to be back together with him, because I didn't want that kind of a relationship. We were not good for one another. It's not the person I wanted to be or was meant to be in this life, I don't think. I know actually. But I was just like, man, now I'm getting, close to my 30s. And when am I ever going to find the person that I'm supposed to be with and have a family? And I remember being so frustrated and almost desperate. I can admit to that, having this feeling of desperation because I wanted it so bad. And I remember meeting my ex before I met my husband, Nate. And I remember being so clouded in my judgment, like thinking it was perfect and not seeing any of the red flags and everything like that. And then we got engaged, and it was literally less than 30 days that we were engaged. And then everything blew up. And I referred to it as a semi truck hitting a concrete wall. That's how I felt. Like I was so just distraught that this was happening again. And at this point, I think I was 30, 31, somewhere in there. And I remember thinking that, like, what now? Now I'm not going to have, enough time to get married, like have a relationship, get married, and then have kids. And I'm getting older and I'm already in my 30s. And all of these things put so much pressure on me, this timeline that I had created in my mind. And I remember in those, dark moments asking for guidance and asking for peace, and to see what I couldn't see before, the clarity of the situation, why it didn't work out. And the more that I stepped out of the frame, as you always say, the more I could see that was not the relationship for me, that it was not going to be, it wasn't going to get to me to where I needed to go. And I was not the right person. And for Nate and I remember that time after this breakup, just going within, and the common denominator in my life is me. The common denominator in all of these relationships is me. So that's the only thing that I can change. So I looked within and started doing more Allison Armstrong, started reading the Bible. I even started having like Bible study with a couple of my really good friends, Jackie and Harv, who's some of your good friends too, just trying to repair my heart and find myself again. And I blossomed into this completely different person. And I was on the verge of that journey when Nate literally walked into my office. We had like an open house every week for new clients to come in and check out what we do. And I was one of the presenters, and he literally showed up for the cheese tray because we had a cheese tray that night. But he showed up for that event. He was invited by his ex-girlfriend, as it happens to be. They were friends at the time. So he showed up. He literally walked through my office door, and I was not looking for someone. And I remember thinking like, oh, he's cute. And he seems really smart. Like, interesting. But I never thought we would have landed here. And that relationship, our relationship, busted all of my timelines. Like, we started dating, we fell in love, we were engaged within 8 months, we were married in a year and a half after we started dating, barely a year and a half. And this year is our 4-year anniversary.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah. But I remember feeling that frustration, that irritation, like it's never going to come. And, I share it in your journey, not physically being there with your journey or a part of it, but sharing
Right,
the
right, right.
understanding somewhat of the understanding of having a baby and not being able to, having fertility issues. And that has been quite the journey over the last 4 years of our marriage too, and having those days of like, when is it going to happen? And I think a lot of it, the frustration piece of it and this lack of faith, really comes from the belief systems we have, our ideas of when it has to happen, how it has to happen, what it's going to look like. And I think that's where I really got stuck. Would you say that's the same for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the timeline is, look, the ladies that are here, and the men that are here, we all have these timelines, right? These preconceived notions of how it is that we're supposed to live our life and what we're supposed to do when, and how far along down the road we should be by a certain stage. And for women, I feel like their timeline or their clock is, biological, marriage, their impending age, what is that going to mean for how they look and how they feel and their vitality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and I speak, obviously from, the female perspective, but we actually ask this question of men, do they have this timeline? And, it was really interesting to hear that it's not just women that have this timeline, that men have it too. And
Mm-hmm.
that, men is more about like career and status and like, are they going to be a good provider? And, that's just, I think it's something that's, biological, like in your DNA, ancestral cell information. And so,
Wait, hold on.
that's
On
that.
that thought,
Yeah.
can I interrupt you?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you were in your 20s or early 30s or any point in your life, really, did you feel like you woke up one day and you heard a clock ticking, like your biological
Yes.
clock?
Well, it wasn't when I was that young. To be quite honest, I was never really sure about wanting kids
Okay.
until I was much older. And so it wasn't until I think I was probably in my like mid to late 30s before I started going, oh my gosh, like, do I want to have kids? Like, I remember the day clearly that I had a conversation with my good friend, Verlee, about the fact that we weren't in relationships and that we wanted to have kids. Like we suddenly were like, oh my gosh, she's always wanted to have kids. But, me, I was kind of like, well, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. And I think that, in those conversations, I was like, should I be freezing my eggs? Like we were like having this, we were just going to go together and like do a, bestie, egg freezing, thing. I don't know. But
Yeah.
so I think that, yes, there was a moment where it started like banging inside my head. And the older I get, the louder it gets, you
Mm,
know?
yeah.
So, I mean, I'm going to be 44 this year. So for me, I'm like,
Still young. Still
but
young.
yeah. So, I think that the reality is that, you know, when it comes to babies, women are having babies much later in life, and there's a lot of new technology and a lot of science there
Mhm.
that wasn't as readily available when we were even in our 20s.
Mhm.
Like the whole biohacking movement has really changed the way that people can live and reproduce, and the ability to freeze eggs or embryos or whatever is, that's really really something you know
Mhm. Yeah.
um and I think that we forget, I think sometimes as women, that men have that um timeline too,
Mhm.
and that everything for them is also happening in divine time.
Mhm.
Many women will marry men that are older than them, And it's because, when men reach a certain age, and we know this through Allison's work, that when they reach a certain age, they go through different phases of how they show up in their life. And
Mhm.
so, when they reach a certain point, they're ready to really step into, having a wife and having children, and them being, older or being further along in their life gives them a different experience of life. And so, sometimes we see women who are with men that are 10, 12, 15, even 20 years older than them.
Mhm.
And it's because the men are in a different place, you know?
Yep, absolutely. Well, and something you were saying in your story is that, if you would have met Quinn earlier, you might not have been the right fit and you needed to go through certain things. For me, I felt like the person that I was before that big event, that big breakup, and that shift of consciousness, I guess, shift of my life and who I really wanted to be. I feel like he wouldn't have liked that Jody. And
Definitely.
I
Agreed.
was
A hundred
very,
percent.
yeah, I was very neurotic. I was a beast. I didn't have time for anything. I was very short with people. I was a completely different person. And I'm not saying the person that I was bad, because I love her too. She's how I ended up here. That we had to go through all of these things. But the person that I am now and the person that I was when I met him, I was a completely different person than, the person that was before that, if that makes sense. And I don't think we would have gotten along as well as we do now if I was
Hmm.
still so rooted in being that person and hadn't decided to shift my life drastically.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that, relationships are always an easy place to look at where divine timing has like stepped in and taken the reins, right?
Mhm.
But, another good place to look at is career.
Mhm.
So, when I first moved to California, I had practiced aesthetics in several places, you know, as an actual practice, right? A practitioner. And so, I had licenses in several states. And, when I moved to California, California wasn't granting reciprocity to out of state licenses, which meant that I had to retake my board exams in order to get a license. And so I went through the regular channels. I, put my name in the hat for so that someday my number would get called and I would get to take my boards and receive an aesthetics license. And so, after about, oh, I don't know, a year of sitting on this list way down at the bottom with hundreds of people ahead of me, I realized and saw the writing on the wall that, I wasn't going to be able to practice aesthetics in California. And so I would practice aesthetics, when I would go back to Arizona to visit family and things like that. And I decided I'll get a new career. And so I got a job at the airport and I became the CFO for a multi-million dollar jet center.
Totally different direction.
Totally different direction, right? It was amazing. It taught me a lot about business. It taught me a lot about how important accounting is and like what that means to a business. It was such a great learning experience. It also taught me a lot about narcissism. It taught me a lot about the different personalities that were outside of the women that I typically would work on in my aesthetics practice. And it really let me see men on a different level and a different place in a male dominated industry when I come from a female dominated industry. So it was really interesting to see the contrast between the two. I stayed in that line of work for about 6 years.
Wow.
Mhm. And right when the big recession happened in 2008 and all of the housing market and everything kind of went to crap and all the developers were losing their asses in their investments, we were part of a development company. And so that side of the business was losing tons of money. And my side of the business was very profitable. And so they looked at that and said, well, we've got all these highly paid accountants that can do her job. And we can offload some of our expenses onto the profitable side of the business. Really smart. I saw it coming from a mile away, both energetically and because I deal with the numbers. And I knew that my days were numbered. And what's interesting is I had a bunch of recruiters reaching out to me to recruit me to other firms.
Mhm.
And, I was doing interviews and meeting with people and talking to people. And I knew that I needed to get out of that position because that position was going to be coming to an end soon. And one day my boss comes in, I hadn't landed anything. My boss comes in and he says, wait, Heather, we got to let you go. And I said, I know, I've been seeing the writing on the wall. I've been waiting for this day to come. Here it is, and I was really cool about it. And it's not his fault,
Yeah.
it's just the way that it is. And, the next couple of weeks, I integrated the new financial team into what I did. And then I took my exit. The last day, the day that I left that position, I got home and there was a letter in my mailbox from the state of California saying, we're granting you reciprocity. Come down and take your picture.
Woohoo!
I didn't even have to test. I sat on that testing list for 5 years.
Wow.
5 years. And
5
just like
years.
that, in divine time. Divine time.
Divine
I
time.
had a license. I was able to open a business and boom, I was right back in the saddle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. I feel my career same way when I look back on all the twists and turns, because I wanted to be a nurse when I was growing up. I was so sure about it until I wasn't, until I worked in a hospital for a while and was like, no, not for me. I'm not doing it. I can't do it. I took a year off. This is a fun fact. I took a year off to find myself whatever after that first year of college. I had a bunch of money in the bank and I wanted to party because I had a new boyfriend. So, that's exactly what I did. But I remember being intrigued by this life insurance and investments course that I could potentially take with this company. And I didn't study very hard for the course and I ended up failing. And you can only write the provincial or like the big exam 3 times. So then I was like, all right, well, 3 times, whoops. It wasn't meant to be. And I went on with life. And it's so interesting because, from there, I went to work for a large security firm, worked my way up, eventually got into safety, then moved over to a consulting firm. And then after the 2008 housing crisis, when the market collapsed, that's when I decided to break up with my then boyfriend. And we owned that house together and our house was worth, $150,000, even though we owed 310. So I was in that big pickle needing to make more money and really hungry to make more money and understand money. And that's when my financial advisor came back to me and said, hey, do you want to work with us? I don't remember him asking me or talking to me or telling me about the opportunity to work part-time with this company or anything when we first did my life insurance like 5 years before that, or a couple of years before that, because I needed life insurance because I bought a house. That I don't remember any other parts of that conversation, but he brought it up again. It's so interesting because I started cracking the books. They had like this big red book. It was giant. And I remember reading through it and being like, this information sounds so familiar, so incredibly familiar. I prepare for the test. I study, go through the first exam, pass the first exam, go into the provincial exam. I go to log in to find out my results. I had passed and you have to print off a bunch of stuff. And there it is, my pass mark. And then the 3 attempts from that year after college when I didn't try and the fail. And I was like, no way. It was the same test. Interesting how I was led divinely right back to this point. And when I look at all of these things, I picked up different skills and abilities along the way. And I was divinely led to go over here and learn this, and then come over here and learn this, and then go back this direction. And it's just ended up so beautifully that I ended up building a brokerage and then, started this coaching company and met you. Like every single piece of my career path has been divinely led. And probably I would say, a guarantee that my entire life was divinely led. If I really truly look back at all of it, it was all divinely led and divinely timed.
Totally. I mean, and I think that being able to see, being able to like go back and like look at the times in your life when, things were just meh,
Yeah.
and then seeing how it worked out for the better. I think that's the beauty in it. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the real opportunity, is to reflect back on times when maybe things weren't as good, or you didn't get something that you really, really wanted. And then look at how things evolved from that point. Was it a death spiral down the drain? Probably not. It was probably, a slip and slide into a row of shot glasses. I mean, it was probably something really fun and exciting. But even if it was the death spiral down the drain, where did the drain lead you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what did you get from the drain?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
that, this is where you can see the beauty in divine timing.
Mm-hmm. The
It's
silver
unfortunate that it
lining.
always has to be a hindsight kind of thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it is what it
But
is.
I don't know if you would agree with this, but I have found that hindsight has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, meaning that, it used to take me so long to figure out like, why did that happen? And I, ruminate over it and obsess over it. Why did this happen? Or how could this have happened differently? What was I supposed to learn? And I mean, when I was in that breakup, before I met Nate, I remember asking God to have peace and serenity and to see what I couldn't see. So clarity. And it started to happen immediately. It was the most insane thing I had ever experienced. It was like watching a movie of my life. Memories would come up and I would replay the memory of what I thought happened. And then it was like there was a double screen or something. I can't even really explain it, where I saw in color instead of in black and white as the memory, but I could see in color, like, you saw it like this, but this is really what was happening. You saw this, but this is what was really happening. And it gave me so much clarity of, oh, I didn't want that. That's not what I wanted in my life. And I can firmly say today, where I sit, that I wouldn't have gone on the awakening journey to the depth that I have today if that wouldn't have happened. I, wouldn't be as spiritual. I wouldn't have found the love of my life, Nate, obviously, if that hadn't happened. But there's so many things that were so beautiful that came out of that I see now, as well as what I was seeing in those moments, even when they were really difficult.
Definitely. And I think that part of this comes from doing the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, part of this clarity comes from taking the time to actually sit with it, ruminate in it, really reflect on the experience that you had, and how you perceive that experience. Ask to be shown. And I think that this is really a testament to you doing the work for your own benefit, right? And for the benefit of everybody around you, because the work that you do on yourself has a ripple effect. How you show up for other people is a result of the work that you've done inside.
Mm-hmm.
There have been times, it's really interesting. There was a trip that we took to Cape Cod with my in-laws. And back then, I don't think that Quinn had proposed yet. And so we went on this trip, and Quinn was dealing with something personal, and I knew about it. And he was just a little difficult to be around. And there were times that I really wanted to just choke him until he wasn't breathing anymore. um, but I knew that he was going through something, and I knew that he was handling it, and he was doing the best that he could. And for me, I just said, I just got to have patience.
Mm-hmm.
He'll get through it, and if he needs my support, he'll ask, and I have to trust in that. Right now, back up even 5 years before that, I would have just come out with an ice pick and given it to him, but the person that I was then in that moment and the person that I am today is completely different. And it's because of the work.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of that self-awareness. And the thing is that self-awareness sometimes can be dangerous if you are in the wrong relationship. And so it's really important that when you're being self-aware, that you are not allowing yourself to become someone who can be gaslighted or whatnot, right?
Yeah, I want you to go into that. What do you mean by that? When you're becoming self-aware, and it could be dangerous depending on the relationship that you're in. You didn't say it like that, but whatever you just said, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, okay, so you're self-aware, right? And you're like, oh, what about me caused this person to behave this way? Right?
Mm,
Sometimes this can be dangerous, right? You looking at the situation and taking responsibility for your role in it is one thing.
yes.
But you looking at yourself and going, what did I do to create this experience with this person? Because it could just be that person is a narcissistic asshole.
Yeah.
That is just who they are. And they're just going to trample all over you because that is the only way that they know how to survive.
Yeah.
And that could be the reason. And where this becomes dangerous is if you're in a relationship with somebody like this and you are having this self-awareness, that you stop and you say, okay, what does this mean about me? What does this mean for me? And is this my fault, really?
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay if it's not. It's great
Mm-hmm.
if it's not.
Yeah. Well, and I think
But
you can still take responsibility for your side of the street or responsibility for yourself without blaming yourself for everything. I did everything wrong. I shouldn't have done this or I shouldn't have done that. If when the biggest shift that I made around that was stopping doing that, like, okay, I did it, but accepting that part of me, that version of me that did those things, because she's a part of me, regardless of whether I liked that piece or not. It's still there. I need to love it and love it back to healing it, or love it back to life, or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to always be fault. It could be you're looking at things from the lens of what could I potentially do differently, or what what was my role in this, and how could I see a different perspective that may ease my mind or ease my feelings at this moment. But I love that you said that, Heather, because I spent a lot of time in other relationships wondering, what did I do to deserve this or bring this on myself or whatever. And sometimes it simply is you needed that lesson, that experience of what it looks like, so you could smell it next time or see it next time, right?
well, and sometimes you're learning the lesson of self-worth.
Yeah.
In my serious relationship before Quinn and the dating relationship off and on before Quinn, I got that lesson not once, but twice from
Mm-hmm.
both of those men, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And when I stepped into the relationship with Quinn, I was like, this is never going to happen to me again.
Yep.
I am worth more than that. I
Yeah.
am a high quality woman and I deserve a high quality man.
Yeah.
In divine timing, of course.
In divine timing. Yes. Something that I wanted to expand on, that I think might be helpful for people, is that when I ruminate on what has happened and I look back, something that it does for me is gives me this new layer of faith and understanding of divine timing, and faith that it's better is coming, and that, the things that I desire were meant for me. Because when I do look back, like we looked back on our career history, like we looked back today on, our relationship history, and we even talked about babies. That's something that we're in together right now, that waiting period for divine timing. But those other things, when I look back on them and where I am now, it just gives me this new level of belief that it's true, that divine timing is real, that, God, the universe, my angels, my guides, all of it were always there and always supporting me, leaning me this direction, turn left, turn right. Like, it was all so divine. So why not the rest of my life? And that has helped me a lot with this process with the baby and not having a baby. And because it comes up a lot, when I'm 37 this year, I think 37. Why is it that you forget your age when you get here? I don't know. I used to make fun of people who forget their age. How do you forget your age? Here I am now. I think I'm turning 37. 37 in
It gets
July.
worse. The older you get,
God.
you start going, hold on, let me do the math in my head. Wait, what year are we in?
Yeah, and I'm horrible at math, so we'll be here all day. But I'm going to be 37, so it's something that people ask all the time. I had a client appointment this morning, and they're like, "Hey, no babies yet?" And there's a really long answer to that question. And then there's a shorter answer to that question. And sometimes when you give the short answer, nope, not yet, still trying, still practicing. Those are the funny things that I'll say. Some people, and I don't think that they mean to be mean or rude or whatever. They just haven't even thought about it before. Oh, you better get on it. You're getting older. They say certain things like that. I remember after our first ectopic pregnancy, my niece had gotten pregnant, like right after. I had that ectopic pregnancy in late August, beginning of September, and she announced she was pregnant in October at Canadian Thanksgiving. And I remember my cousin, who is 15 years older than me. I've always thought of her as like an aunt. She came up to me and she's like, "Hey, you better get on it. Your niece is surpassing you now." And I was crushed. Like, literally, I went to the bathroom and I cried. And I wasn't mad at her, because I know that she didn't know. She's not. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, because sometimes they're just smelling a fart. When you see somebody that's got a face that's all crunched up or whatever, maybe they're just smelling a fart. Maybe they're having a bad day. I have no idea what's going on in their world. And I can't, they don't know what's going on in mine unless I have told them. So I try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And later on that evening, somebody brought it up in front of her. Like, how are you healing from surgery? And I was like, yeah, it's a slow process, or, whatever, feeling better. I'm allowed to drive now. And she's like, what do you mean? And, the cat came out of the bag, and you could tell how mortified she felt for saying what she said. But it's in those moments that I've been challenged and tested the most, of believing in divine timing and having that faith in God and the universe, that it will happen, that when we're supposed to have a baby, that we will be blessed with one. And I feel that in my heart. And so that has really helped me, just coming back to that, all of the other examples I have throughout my life. Why not this one? I know I've channeled. Heather accidentally channeled my children once. That was interesting. She could tell you that story if she wants, but I know that they're there. I know that they were meant for me, and I have that faith. So it's something that I deal with when people talk about it to me, but now it's at a completely different level than it was a year ago or 2 years ago. I have more faith where I sit right now than I did even yesterday.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think, what can we do? What can we do to trust divine timing? It's a good question. I think that the first step in trusting divine timing is to see where divine timing has shown up in your life previous to this point.
Yes.
Maybe you didn't win the lottery, because if you would have won the lottery, it would have made you not meet your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Because you would have been jet setting all over the world, and it would have been harder for the universe to bring your partner to you if you were in, Africa one day and France the next.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it would have slowed that process for you.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you wouldn't have been
maybe
interested in one because you just wanted, a boyfriend to go around with you, and you didn't want responsibility.
Exactly.
Or if you had it in your mind that once you settle down and get married, then you have a family and that ties you down. If you had that belief system, then you wouldn't really want to be finding somebody. That could be the reason.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be something as simple as, you didn't get that car that you wanted. You had it on order. You had money put down on it. You don't understand why you didn't get that car that you ordered and put money down on. So you had to buy this other car that wasn't as cool as the car that you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And come to find out that first car had all kinds of safety things. And in fact, the very VIN number that you had reserved was involved in a massive collision on the freeway, and everybody died.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, these are obviously huge extremes. And I don't know if this has happened to somebody here, that's watching right now, but for some reason, this is the information that I'm getting, but so, look back into your history on where divine timing has actually worked for your benefit, because it's always for your benefit. It's always better. It's maybe not what you want right now. It's better.
Yeah.
You see, when divine timing kicks in and you don't, achieve something or manifest something or call something into your experience the way that you wanted, it's because better is on the way.
Mm-hmm.
And why would you settle for that when you can have better?
Yeah. When better was meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So when you don't get something, just smile and know that it's because better's on the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not over. That's something that I remind myself of all the time. Just because I didn't get it here doesn't mean that it's over. And I check my timelines and my belief systems on how I think it should look and how attached I am to how it should look, the timeline, those kinds of things, and try and ease off, because in a world of a billion possibilities, if you don't want to lock into just one. There's a billion possibilities here. Even it doesn't mean that it's over. So just because you didn't get it today.
Exactly.
Yeah. Something else that your husband actually taught me when we were doing some manifestation work together, that has really helped, especially, mostly with the baby thing, because it was about manifesting that family. And Quinn had said, start enjoying life where you are right now. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you're just like putting your life on hold for that day when you have a baby and everything changes. But how much time are you spending in reveling in the fact that you don't have a kid waking you up at 5 a.m. or multiple times during the night, or that you get to be just you and your husband, or, you get to do this or you get to do that. And it's so much easier. And a belief system that I needed to shift at the time when he said that was that if I was happy here, like if I was satisfied and enjoying this part of my life, that I was somehow disregarding or maybe even disgracing the desires that I had or that I have of having a child. I don't know. It's kind of like backwards. It felt wrong to appreciate these moments. And it was in that moment with that conversation with Quinn that I realized that I wasn't appreciating all of the things that we have. And I know I teach, like attracts like. So I needed to appreciate these moments. And that helped a lot. I don't feel that same frustration or impatience that I did before, even, 6 months ago, a year ago, that I did with having a baby. And something else that helped is I've heard it before, once you get there, you'll never really think about all the time that passed or how long it took. It won't matter how long it took. And I always used to get so irritated because, my brokerage company would say that about promotions. Once you get there, it won't matter how long it took. And I'd be like, what do you know? It was true. But this really landed for me when my sister-in-law, she had some fertility issues. And then she ended up getting pregnant. And when I was going through that ectopic pregnancy, the first one, and the surgery and everything, her and her husband, we hadn't even had the ectopic pregnancy. We just thought we had a miscarriage at this point. They were coming over for dinner. And I remember her sitting on the couch with the baby in the car seat. And I remember being kind of just observing everything. I was kind of numb at the time and just trying to deal with my emotions and not really knowing how at that point, because I was super raw because it had just happened. And I remember her looking at her baby, and I remember and she's cooing at him and whatever, right? Like, he's so cute. He's a newborn at that time. And I remember thinking, wow, there's not a sign of pain or irritation or stress on her face. Like, I bet you she doesn't even think think not poorly, but she doesn't sit there and fawn over all of the tough stuff that it took to get to this moment. She's just so incredibly excited and happy to be in this moment. It's like she has forgotten all of that pain. And I'm sure she hasn't forgotten, but it just wasn't relevant in that moment, if that makes sense. And I'm not doing it justice, but I just remember having this big aha, it doesn't matter, because once it comes, the time, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long it took. It will be a blessing.
Well, and I think that is a really important thing to know and understand and to learn, that, if you are waiting on divine timing, you need to be present for your life as it is right now.
Yeah.
You can't always be looking at the future. Oh, tomorrow I'm going to do this, or that, I'm going to create this, or this is coming in my, and I'm going to manifest this thing, right? Being present in right now and enjoying these moments of right now is going to send out the energy, like you said, to bring in what it is that you desire.
Mm-hmm.
Like attracts more like.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Alignment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do we have any other tips?
Isn't this a fun conversation?
I know. Yeah. If you guys are liking,
are you guys enjoying this conversation?
Yeah. We just kind of went off on a tangent, but if you're liking it, make sure you click that like button below, and share it with all of your friends. We appreciate you watching. Yeah. Any other final tips?
I'm listening. I think that sums it up. I mean, I think we really covered it there. If you have any questions, those of you who are on live with us now, drop them in the little chat, and we will certainly get them answered for you. We've got a few minutes here still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think just, really look back to where you were and how things changed for your betterment, this or better, and how divine timing landed it at exactly when you needed it, exactly when it was perfect for you, when it would come into your life and it would be exactly what you needed. I mean, another example that I think I've given before on maybe a manifestation episode that we had was how we got this house. We were looking in Colorado and we could not buy a house to save our life there. It was like we just got annihilated there.
Mm-hmm.
We came out here and everything just fell right into place. It was the easiest process of anything that we have ever done, I think, probably in our life. you know? So I just think that, you know, it just happens. Divine timing, when it's meant for you, it will show up, you know? I'm going to bring back a comment that you had made, Jody, about, you know, and that Trisha put in the chat. You know, she says, such an interesting comment. The things that I desire were meant for me. Exactly. You wouldn't desire it if it wasn't meant for you.
That's right.
You wouldn't, it wouldn't even be on your radar.
Yeah. That's right. So something that my guides dropped in here is, what do you think is possible versus impossible? That's a really good question. I think when we get stuck in this conversation of waiting for divine timing, like, is it possible that, you know, it comes faster than you thought? Just like that timeline that we were going through of it, for me, I really believed I needed to find somebody to date them for a couple of months, to a couple of years. That's what I had into my mind. And then you get engaged, and then a year later you get married, and then you start trying. So like at 30, I was like, I'm hooped. I'm going to be like 35, 40 before I ever even start having kids. I haven't even found somebody yet. Like it was really stopping me because I believed it was impossible to be any other way. So really check yourself on what you think is impossible or possible. Because again, billions of possibilities exist. Yeah. Yeah. So amazing. Now we're like reading all the comments.
I know, I'm like trying to catch up on the comments here. So Trisha has something here. She says, the notion of appreciating what is to assist in the manifestation is a big shift for me. That's a big shift. So hang on to that shift, you know, keep that shift in your mind. I know what you're up to, and you know, you have to remember to appreciate the right nows in order for that to come in. I realize I have been reluctant to dismiss my desire for something I'm not getting. Am I betraying myself? Good question, Jody.
So what catches my eye right away is reluctant to dismiss my desire for something I'm not getting. So the reluctant to dismiss, but the immediate answer I got was no. And maybe I'm not understanding what you're saying with, I realize I've been reluctant to dismiss. So what are you dismissing? Are you trying to say, I don't need this thing now? Is that what you're saying, or am I getting that wrong? Are you trying to simply dismiss it because you haven't gotten it up to this point? And if it hasn't happened, then probably won't happen, or whatever else is going on in your mind? I would have those questions. But when you asked the question, Heather, when you read it, it was immediate no. What'd you get?
I gotta know. So, you know, I don't think you should dismiss your desire at all. I do not think you should dismiss your desire. I think that you should put your desire out there, or better.
Or better.
I would like this or better. Thank you.
And something fun that you can do is really flesh out why you want that thing, like what you will feel when you receive it. You know, I'm going to be excited. I'm going to be joyful. I'm going to be over the moon, whatever. And then start adding more of that to your life in all of the areas of your life. Like, what else can I do, or what can I experience, or what would help me feel more of that in my everyday life? So now you're appreciating what you have right now, and you're giving it that extra va-va-voom by adding those things that are in alignment with those feelings too. Yeah. And Kat had a question there. I missed it, but the car thing, the first thing that I hear, it's interesting because I feel the two pieces of the question are being separated. The car and the rushing have been separated. That's the sense that I get. And I get a yes to rushing and a no to the car. And the way that I interpret this is that that you're on track with what your desire is. And there's a part of you that is rushing it. Is that what you get, Heather?
Yeah, so I get that you're trying to put momentum behind it forcefully. So, it's like relax and allow divine timing to bring it to you. So the reason that it's not showing up is because you are trying to push it. You're trying to, round peg, square hole that situation, and it's just not working. So just stop trying to help it, and it will show up for you.
Yeah. This is such a great way to end today's episode, because next week we are talking all about that. The title is going to be There's More to Life Than Just Doing, right? So we're going to talk about how you make that transition of allowing things to happen in your life. What do you have to do, should be doing, whatever. We're going to go through all of that, and we're going to tap in with our guides and see how they weigh into. So make sure that you set a reminder, that you're subscribed to the channel, and that you like this video, and then join us next week on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Central, and 4 p.m. Eastern. Thank you guys so much for watching.